On today's Locked On Senators, we're joined by one of our best friends of the show, former Sens defenseman. It's Marc Methot.
We get into how Jacques Martin is affecting team defense, blocking shots, and evening out the ice time.
All that and more on today's edition of the Locked On Senators podcast. It's your team every day.
Your Locked On Senators, your daily podcast on the Ottawa Senators. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
I'm Jake Sanderson, and you're listening to Locked On Senators podcast.
I'm Tim Stützle, and you're listening to the Locked On Senators podcast.
Welcome inside episode 988 of the Locked On Senators podcast. I'm Ross Levitan on the outskirts of enemy territory in Winnipeg, Manitoba. Alongside Brandon Piller up in the Blue Mountains. You can follow the show on social media. We're at Sens Central on Twitter, LockedOn.Senators on Instagram. The show is free and available on all podcast platforms, including on YouTube, where a like, comment, and subscription go a long way to helping the show grow. Make sure you hit the notification bell so you know when our postcast goes live after each and every Ottawa Senators game. Today is Friday, February 23rd, and Pilsy, we missed you last night in the postcast. I need to get your immediate reaction. How were you feeling last night watching a 4-1 Sens win over the Dallas Stars?
Yeah, well, obviously I wasn't there for the postcast, so you know the Ottawa Senators have a great win, and you guys get to have a vibecast. It seems like they save all the losing for me and when I'm hosting, but never mind that. It's a 4-1 win up against the Dallas Stars. Ross, it was so great to see a couple of things. First off, Josh Norris and Drake Batherson, that duo was clicking. Norris had a beautiful goal from a beautiful pass from Drake Batherson. That's what you want to see. The shot blocking was continued. The discipline was continued. Only one power play for the Dallas Stars. And one thing, I missed this live, but obviously watched the replays of the game. When the Dallas Stars tied it up with, 6 seconds left in the first, normally, that is the TSN turning point for the Ottawa Senators, and it's all downhill from there. But they're able to bounce back and score 3 unanswered goals after that. And Anton Forsberg, another great game. That's 3 great games for him since he's returned from injury. So all of these things culminating together are going to lead to victories, even up against better teams, contending teams. If you can keep to this process that Jacques Martin has laid out for the team, this team's going to have a lot more success.
And they've got another big dog. The reigning Stanley Cup champion Vegas Golden Knights are coming to town on Saturday. For more on Thursday's game, you can go check out the postcast. Martian and I weaved our way through it, but we've got over 40 minutes coming up with Marc Methot. So we want a quick word against the Vegas Golden Knights. No Mark Stone out week to week. Sounds like a laceration. So nothing to do with his back. But without him and without Jack Eichel, all of a sudden, this seems like a bit of a winnable game for Ottawa. Vegas has lost 4 of their last 5 games. Their only win came against the NHL's 31st or 32nd place team, the San Jose Sharks.
Yeah, Ross, and obviously those are the big dogs injured, but the Vegas Golden Knights on the Daily Faceoff page have 7 injured players right now. Like, obviously your top dogs being out hurts, but when you have that much depth out as well, this forward group is very beatable, in my opinion. Now, obviously, the Vegas Golden Knights back end is one of the main reasons why they're able to be successful and get the Stanley Cup last year, and they're pretty much healthy on the back end, so that's still going to be a tough battle there. But if this Ottawa Senators forward group can stay committed to defense and then capitalize on their chances like they've been doing, I don't want to say it up against a Vegas team that's had this Ottawa Senators number, but this could be a better game than usual against the Golden Knights.
Well, if you want to go to the game, make sure you consider taking the GLEBE Central Pub shuttle to and from the CTC for only $17. Look, Vegas and Ottawa have played 11 times head-to-head. The Senators have 1 win. 1 win, Pilsy, in those games. It was crazy. A 5-4 win in 2018. The Senators have not beat Vegas since their first year in the league.
Wow.
That's neither here nor there. It's another opportunity on Saturday night to do just that. We'll have the postcast for you after tomorrow night's game. Coming up, we've got a fantastic conversation with Marc Methot. We're just going to take it for the rest of the show. That's next. You're listening to Locked On Senators. It's your team every day.
Today's episode is brought to you by our friends over at Indeed. When you're drafting a fantasy team, do you ever wish you could do the same thing with your business team? If you're building a roster to win the league, you need Indeed. Indeed is a hiring platform where you can attract, interview, and hire all in one easy place. Don't spend hours on multiple job sites looking for candidates with the right skills. Do it all in one spot with Indeed. You can find top talent fast with Indeed's suite of powerful hiring tools like Indeed Instant Match, assessments, and virtual interviews. With Instant Match, as soon as you sponsor a post, you're going to get a short list of quality candidates whose resume on Indeed match your job description, and you can invite them to apply right away. So sit back, relax, let Indeed do the hard work for you. With Instant Match, you can start hiring fast. Join over 3 million businesses worldwide using Indeed to hire great talent fast. Indeed knows when you're growing your own business, you got to make every dollar count. That's why with Indeed, you only pay for quality applications that match your must-have job requirements. Visit Indeed.com/lockedon to start hiring now. Indeed.com/lockedon. Terms and conditions apply. Cost per application pricing not available for everyone. Need to hire? You need Indeed.
You need a good time? You need the Glebe Central Pub. This episode's brought to you by the Glebe Central Pub, right in the heart of the Glebe at 779 Bank Street. You can visit them for awesome food, great drinks, the atmosphere to match. They're also an Arsenal supporter bar. And if you know one thing about watching footy on the weekend, it's that the vibes are always immaculate. So make sure you get out to the Glebe Central Pub, whether it's a morning for the Arsenal game, whether it's at night, you want to watch hockey, they've got all the TVs that you need. They also have the Sens Shuttle for only $17 will get you to and from the CTC. That's $17. Leave the keys at home. Sue will get you there. Sue will bring you back. The bus leaves an hour and 15 minutes before the Senators start. Always get there on time, and then it'll pick you right back up 20 minutes later from the exact spot that they drop you off. It's so easy to navigate, so easy to beat the traffic and just have a good time at the Glebe Central Pub. You can get your tickets online, GlebeCentralPub.com, Sens Bus, the tab right there. And when you head to the pub, make sure you let them know that Locked On Senators sent you Saturday. This Saturday, the bus is going for the Vegas game. And you know what even makes this sweeter? Live music at the Glebe Central Pub. So the vibes continue after the game. They'll take you right back to where the party is at. So go check them out today, 779 Bank Street, and let them know that Locked On Senators sent you. The vibes are free at the GCP. All right, we now welcome on a very, very special guest. His 19th appearance on the show, but it's the first time that I can call him a Hall of Famer after being inducted into the London Knights Hall of Fame just last week. He's a former Senator, NHL veteran, and he had a little bit of blood on both sides of last night's battle, former Dallas Stars. Well, it's Marc Methot. You already know what's going on, Meth. How are you today?
I'm good. I've got a new background here, as I mentioned to you guys earlier. So for people watching, like, what the hell's Meth doing right now? It's because I've had to move upstairs because we're staging our home to sell it. And when I set this up this morning, it seemed like a really good idea in this area, but now I've got the sun poking through the window. I'm facing southeast here on the road. So momentarily the sun will pass through and there'll be a huge glare, but we'll get through it.
Well, Meth, that's just your cautious optimism seeping through the windows and shining on all of us here.
Oh, there it is.
Yeah, there it is. For everyone just listening on YouTube, this is a whole different style of Meth. He's not down in the basement. He doesn't have a band tee on or something. It's nice pottery, nice painting. He's got a nice sweater on. So I think we're going to get a very a cleaned up version of the Meth Dog here.
Yeah, I think he looks like he's like about to start an interior designing project right now.
I know this is all my wife, man. I'm just in a little corner here. But in our dining room where we never sit and have dinners at all, this is actually where I air out my kids' hockey equipment. So, but no, if I'm enjoying it, and this is almost symbolic. I'm coming out of the basement. I'm in a nice warm area now. There's lots of light. The Sens are winning. Spring is around the corner. Things are looking up, guys.
Yeah, we're trying to get out of the basement for the Ottawa Senators as well, man. That's
True.
But before we get to that, man, like now that you're a Hall of Famer, I mean, of all Hall of Fames too, we were talking about this on the show. Like the London Knights are probably the cream of the crop of the Hall of Fame that has the most pull in junior hockey. Like, how did you find out about it? Because we heard on TSN you talk about the weekend itself, but how did the call go? How did you find out that you were going to be a Hall of Famer?
Yeah, no, it was so flattering. I got a phone call from Marc Hunter, the general manager there, and he was obviously with the group, with the team when I was there. Then obviously for a period of time was with the Leafs. Now he's back, which I don't blame him. I mean, they run pretty well in NHL junior style game, or rather organization there. But no, they called me a couple months back and told me about it. Just, for the pure fact of trying to coordinate the proper date so that I can come down for the event, because he was aware that I was still working with TSN and all that stuff. So that was a really cool conversation. It caught me off guard. I always say I was a stay-at-home defenseman. I've been a stay-at-home defenseman as long as I can remember. I mean, I wasn't even playing on the power play in my later minor hockey years, right? Like this is just who I became. So my point is I never really received any of these types of accolades, right? I mean, usually I've flown under the radar, had a pretty good career, but never, didn't come with all the bells and whistles that maybe some of the more notable players would receive. So anyway, very, very flattering. It was an honor. I was able to go up there on Thursday with my family. I rented a big SUV. So my parents came along with myself, my wife, and my kids. And it was actually, so Thursday was when the storm came through and came into Ottawa. So you guys should have seen this 401 from Toronto to London when we finally hit the snowstorm. It was pandemonium. Like EMS hadn't made their way to the roads yet. There were vehicles everywhere. We almost got in an accident. I got cut off by a red truck. I ended up on the shoulder in the snow, and then I had to dodge a couple car parts in a van. Lucky for me, no one was screaming in the vehicle when I was doing this until after the fact. But no, we made our way to London safe and sound. I was stressing balls the whole way through. But the Friday, the actual day where all the stuff was going on, it was very classy. Really not at all like a junior style situation that you would expect. It was very, very professional. Took care of my family, took care of Jim McKellar, the other gentleman that was inducted along with Billy Carroll. So anyway, long story short, it was really well done. Dale and Marc Hunter took great care of me when I was in London. And I'm very grateful and thankful for that.
Yeah, and that must have been awesome too for you, Meth, for your kids to be a part of that, right? Because they weren't really, if I remember their ages correctly, they weren't really around when you were playing. Right. So for them to see, sorry, you're just absolutely blasted with sunshine right now.
I'm good. I'm gonna keep angling myself off here. You guys keep going. We'll just
okay. Yeah, how cool is that for your kids to see that? Like, wow, like dad was a big deal playing hockey and all these people are here to celebrate him. Like that must have been awesome for you.
Yeah. I mentioned that last night during the broadcast. I think for me, the coolest part, aside from my billet mom to be there and a part of it, would have been my kids, right? Like just, they have no idea. I had my son, we had Jack, my last year in Dallas, and obviously he doesn't remember anything. And then of course my daughter came along a couple years later. So, just to see their faces. And I mean, I think more with my son being that he's 6 years old, my daughter's still kind of out to lunch with it. She doesn't quite understand yet, but Jack certainly does. And, being
able to look good in the Sens jerseys.
Yeah. Well, that was funny. Right. So, a friend of ours, family friends, they had, ordered a couple Sens jerseys for my kids for Christmas. It was a nice present. So I thought, let's just bring them. It'll be hilarious. London obviously has a surplus of, I'm assuming, Leaf fans. I can only assume, being out there. But no one made any comments. Everyone was very respectful. And how do you yell at a bunch of kids, right, when they're wearing
if there's jerseys? A fan base, I wouldn't put it past. It's those guys.
Depending on the alcohol consumption and all that. But you're right. I guess that is possible. But people there were very classy, and it was a nice welcome. It's kind of unfortunate though, because, a lot of the younger fans probably don't even remember me. And I can't believe I'm saying that, but it's really, 20 years removed from when we won the Memorial Cup. So there's a whole new generation of fans that are probably watching me walk out on the ice and going, who the hell's this guy? But for the older people that were there that remember, it was really neat to be able to share that with them.
Well, you played on literally the best junior hockey team of all time during one of those seasons. Do you think you have the least amount of goals of anyone in the Hall of Fame? You got 6 goals in over 150 games.
What a question.
Probably. No, it's a fair question. The thing is, when I was in junior, my game, like, I guess after my first year, especially my first year, I was paired with Dennis Weidman. I was very fortunate. So I was playing top pairing, at least top 4 minutes, right off the bat as a 17-year-old. And then that's when I knew right then and there that was going to be my role. Like, scoring goals was certainly not going to be part of my job. It was going to be just putting out fires. And then as I progressed, I had a really big summer and I put on a ton of weight. Like, I was probably 220 at least my second year junior in camp. And I mean, I wasn't overweight. I put on a lot of muscle.
We've seen the poster, Matt.
Yeah. So as you can imagine, and under the old rules, like, I was punishing players my second year. Hurt a lot of guys too, because you could ride guys out, right? So a player would dump the puck in the corner, and now you might be able to put a paw on them just to give them a little push as they're coming into the zone and you're backing off when he chips it behind you. I was able to almost lock in with them and literally ride them all the way into the glass, right? And then finish my check. So that was sort of my bread and butter there, just being very physical and imposing on people. And that's sort of how I made a name for myself in junior hockey. So that led into my last year. But I think more notably, talking about the goals, I had a couple goals in the Memorial Cup, and those were big ones. And I think that's what really kind of turned it for us. I mean, had we not won our first round robin game against Rimouski, we went into overtime against Crosby. Yeah. Had we not won that game, things could have gone differently, right? So I had 2 goals in that game, the first and the OT goal. And I think that really kind of turned things around for us, or at least it propelled it there. And but you're right, Ross. I deserve the chirps. Not a goal scorer, but I earned my way into that league.
Plus 91 your last 2 seasons in junior, dude. You're barely on the ice for a goal against. You know it's all in good fun. And what I will say, and you just confirmed, you're a big goal player. You're a big game player. You're what, 2 game winners in playoffs as well in the NHL?
My game, I feel like I can't believe I'm already at a point now in my life where I'm talking about the old days when I played. It's kind of pathetic, but
yeah, you didn't even wear a visor.
I always took no visor either. I was old school, but no, I always took great pride in the playoffs. I like to think my game always elevated when the games mattered. It's just I've always sort of been that way, and it started early on, obviously in junior hockey in the playoffs. For guys like myself, those long seasons, and a lot of players can still relate to that probably. An 82-game season, blocking shots, taking hits, laying guys out, whatever it is, a lot of toll on your body. It can get monotonous and long and hard, and it's stressful. So, I find that style of play is it's appreciated in the postseason, right? I mean, I think people really start to notice it and how effective it is. And I think that's why guys like myself, guys that play a more simplistic game, even some of the role players that you'll see step it up on those third and fourth lines, it's just a great opportunity to shine and get a little bit more attention and help your team out. And I think that's something that always complimented with my game.
No, it's awesome, man. You're fan favorite in 2 cities now in Canada and much hated in 2 others, in Montreal and Toronto. Yep. We love you for it. We absolutely do. Let's get into some NHL discussion after a quick word. This is Locked On Senators, your team every day.
Today's episode is brought to you by our friends over at Ibotta. Grocery bills are so expensive these days. You already know that, but now they don't have to be. Start getting cash back on your grocery shopping with free Ibotta app and get cash back every time you shop. Do you love making money, but also love spending money? Don't we all? Now you can make money while you spend it every time you shop with Ibotta. Ibotta is a free app that gives you the most cash back every time you shop on hundreds of items, from groceries to beauty supplies to toys. So make sure you're beating inflation no matter what you're purchasing. The average Ibotta user earns $256 per year. That's money back in your wallet. Other apps give you points that don't amount to much. With Ibotta, you just add your offers in the app, upload your receipt, and you get real cash that you can cash out on your bank account, PayPal, or gift cards. Join the over 50 million users and earn cash back every time you shop from over 2,700 brands and retailers, including Lowe's, Macy's, Sephora, Best Buy, and more. Right now, Ibotta is offering our listeners $5 just for trying Ibotta using the code LOCKEDONNHL when you register. Just go to the App Store or Google Play Store and download the free Ibotta app to start earning cash back and use code LOCKEDONNHL. That's Ibotta in the Google Play or App Store and use code LOCKEDONNHL. Check it out today, guys. Ibotta.
All right, back with the fellas. Marc Methot is with us. Pilsy, I'm Ross Levitan. This is Locked On Senators. It's a feel-good victory Friday after the Senators got a 4-1 win over the Dallas Stars. Meth was in the building working it for TSN. The suit looks sharp, but the Sens maybe even better. Meth, what was the key to success in that game? Could you see it early enough? I know you're talking throughout the game. That just looked like as complete of a defensive effort as we've seen in a long time.
Yes. And I think Cheryl mentioned it, I believe, in the first intermission when she mentioned, it could have been the second, but at one point she mentioned urgency and you could call it whatever you like. You could call it desperation, second effort. I just noticed they were playing on their toes and they were very aggressive. They were jumping on pucks. There's just visually when you're in the building and watching, there was so much pace, and they were winning puck battles, and you're going to turn over pucks throughout the game. There's going to be mistakes. It's easy to cherry pick those mistakes, but they were minor. There weren't a ton of them. And like I said, there was just way more compete in their game. And I think when they're playing sort of in sync together and their structure and, guys are reloading and coming back and they've got a good F3 coming back and defense are able to stay up. I think all of that just came together. And then Forsberg was pretty good too. He made timely saves when he needed to. I was impressed. When I was setting up my FanDuel segment during the day, I have to come up with some picks, right? But the FanDuel segment for me, it's not just a FanDuel segment. It's also kind of just my opener, right? That I do with TSN. So I have to think of a topic. And typically I always tell myself, I'm like, the regional broadcast probably won't like if I lean heavy on like the opponent money line all the time. So I have to find a way to think of a main topic that doesn't involve the Sens getting, pumped. And last night was one of those chances where I thought, okay, I'm going to lean on Ottawa, but we're going to go puck line just because I think at the very least it'll be tight. But they surprised me. So my point is I thought Dallas was just going to take it because they're rolling right now. Mind you, they've been struggling lately, but they're first in the Central. They're doing great. They've got a great team. Ottinger was starting, and I'm thinking like, shit, this isn't going to look good for Ottawa tonight. And they just come back from Florida, might be a little road weary, but they proved me wrong. They were so much energy. And I know there was only 16,000 fans or so announced, but the fans were engaged. They were into it too. There was good atmosphere in the building. So all in all, between that, and we can get into it a little deeper, but I thought they looked excellent, and it wasn't a fluke. That's what I liked about that game last night. It wasn't a fluke. And then more importantly, I was prepping notes, a little bit after the game and this morning, and I'm thinking like, here we are. We're no longer focused on the role players. When the team's struggling, Brandstrom's playing great or Kastelik's playing great. Like you're focused on the role guys or, the third line defensemen or the third or fourth line forwards, and you're criticizing those guys. I've noticed that when now all of a sudden we're just praising some of your top dogs, they're starting to play and perform properly. That's a good sign. That's when the team's doing well and they're heading in the right direction.
Yeah, and the team's commitment to defense, Meth, I think has really been a big bright spot for them, much like your dining room corner right there, a big bright spot. But when you have 3 games in a row where you're blocking 25 or more shots consistently, from your perspective and throughout your career, what does it take to legitimately get the entire team to buy into blocking shots? Like, is it one of the veterans doing it and you're like, okay, Claude Giroux's blocking shots, I gotta block shots? Is it the coaching staff getting on you? Is it those role players like you talked about, them doing it? Like, how do you actually get a full team of guys to be like, I'm gonna stand in the way of this 95 mile per hour slap shot and I'm gonna do whatever I can to stop it every time?
Yeah, well, sorry, I have to lean forward here. Outside of just maintaining a basic sense of pride for the team you're playing for, which, I mean, I know it sounds kind of fluffy and it's a bit of word salad as far as, those cliches you hear in the room all the time, but it's true. It applies. And I think, after you start stringing together a couple pretty good games, and you mentioned it there, Pilsy, with your leadership. I mean, to me, that's everything. I think it always starts and ends with your leaders, right? And I think your coaches can present a game plan. Doesn't necessarily mean you're going to execute it every night. But I think when your leaders are leading the way and showing by example, by you mentioned blocking shots, whether it's Giroux or Brady or anybody else, that's when you get total buy-in from the rest of the group, right? So, even last night, I saw Ridley take one off the ankle. He went down. I was a little worried there initially, but that's what you want to see. You want to see when you start seeing your young guys buying in and getting in front of point shots, that's when you're heading and trending in the right direction. So that was refreshing to see. And it's unfortunate though that we're starting to praise the team now when they're still at the bottom of the barrel. But I guess if you want to be positive about it, you want to see what the team can do, and you want them going into the offseason, I suppose, with a head of steam and playing the right way. I think for me, ultimately, it's a good time to evaluate your group, yes, but you want to give them at least a very basic foundation. And I think the defensive side, those adjustments that they've been making, that Jacques Martin has been implementing, that's huge. Because whether Jacques is here next season as a coach or not, and that's a conversation we can have here in a little bit, but whether it's him or not, I think as a group, as long as you've got your team understanding what they need to do on the defensive side of the puck, everything else just sort of kind of falls in line after the fact, right? Like if you can shore up your defensive issues, you're going to get your offensive chances. This group is so gifted offensively with a lot of the firepower that they have up front. So for me, it's like you nailed it right there, Pilsy. There's buy-in now. And I think largely it's just guys coming back. They're not cheating as much anymore. And I've been banging on that drum now for a couple months since Jacques came in, where you've got a very disciplined high F3 in the offensive zone. And that led to, like, that was a prime example on which goal was it? I think on the Norris goal in the second period last night, where you had guys back. Now it was a bit of a fluke because Batherson turned it over first from the D zone when he came back, but Ridley Gregg was tracking back when Artem Zub stepped up on Deleandra, and that created a little bit of a turnover. And because you have numbers back, that allowed Norris to build tons of speed up on that little low swing. And then he ends up beating Miro Heiskanen, by the way, an unbelievable skater, in that foot race to score the goal. So, I'm cherry picking one specific play that you could argue a little bit, but it demonstrates how important it is to have guys tracking back properly. All the winning teams do it. And it's nice to see that the Sens are on board now a little bit with it.
Now, we love stats and compiling win-loss records in certain situations. But can you tell as well just how impactful Shane Pinto's been? They're 8-3-2 since he gets back. And Matt, I think this is probably the most asinine stat I've ever heard. In his entire career, when Shane Pinto has a point, the Senators are 35-5-5. And this is like a last place team the whole time throughout. Can one player on a league minimum contract with the asterisks make that much of a difference?
I'm such a big fan of this kid. I shouldn't call him a kid. He's obviously a man, but no, I love the way he plays. I love his attitude. I mean, he's just like, he kind of gives off this happy-go-lucky, doesn't take himself too seriously type of vibe, in those interviews. And to me, those are always the players that end up, becoming lifers with those organizations, because they don't seem to get too high or too low. And I think that translates very well into his play. I mean, he doesn't panic out there. And that you said it, like, he missed how much time, 41 games, comes right back in, no big deal, and starts performing right away. And he's only going to get better as his feet, get underneath him here. And he's been back for a little while, but I think, coupled with the fact that he's missed half the season and obviously a little bit more maturity moving forward over the next season, I think we're going to see him take a big step. He's already doing it now, right? Like, he's largely the reason for Norris getting bumped down. And now I know Norris had a fantastic game last night, but it's nice to see that internal competition that you see Jacques to always talk about. And that was the case when I played. It's always great to have that, because you inadvertently push each other. I mean, whether you know it or not, you're fighting for your job, and it's not always necessarily for the team. You're also playing for yourself and your career, right? Like you want to establish yourself as a second line guy or a first line player. You have all these internal battles going on, underneath the big goal of winning games. And all that sort of feeds into it. So I think it's nice to see Shane Pinto come in, be impactful right away. I love the player. He's bigger than you think he is. And I think a lot of fans probably don't realize that. I mean, I've stood by him a couple times and you think, wow, like he's a lot more imposing than I thought he was. He's tall. He kills the fitness tests it's my understanding, at least. I know there's a lot of guys that are in great shape on that team. So things have maybe changed over the last couple seasons, but I know he does very well there as well. So I'm a fan of his, and I'm curious to see where he ends up over the next couple seasons here with the Ottawa Senators.
Yeah, and blocking shots was one thing I've noticed they've done really well lately, Meth. But another thing that I've kind of noticed and has been a trend lately with the Sens doing well here is the evened out ice time on the back end too.
Yes.
Right? Like this is a team where we're very used to having Thomas Chabot play 28 minutes and then the third pair, like Brandy's playing like 12 or something. Like last night, you're looking at 1850 for Zoop, 2145 for Chikrin, 17, 20, 20. Like none of these guys are getting overworked. They're flowing through the deep pairs here. How big of a contribution is that to this team being able to block shots and being able to be defensively better when you're rolling through those lines a little bit more evenly?
I love that you mentioned that because I had that written down here too. That was something I wanted to touch on. And it's not just the back end. It's also up front.
Yeah,
like I was checking the ice times after the game. Yeah. That's what I like about Jacques. And a lot of coaches do it. Don't get me wrong. It's not just Jacques Martin, but there's so much emphasis on his shift lengths. That's a big thing. I've heard some stories too from other players from when they played here under him. Lot of emphasis. Like he's back there timing it sometimes. Like he'll have like a little timer behind the bench or a phone apparently, and he's doing it just to check on, just to see what the habits are and who's extending shifts, who's cheating a little bit more than usual. So when you have fresh legs, I think Cheryl and I mentioned it. I don't know if we mentioned it on the broadcast, but we were talking about it. Or I was talking about with someone. We noticed during the penalty kill, they were just rolling. Oh, it could have been Graham Creech from 1200. They were just mowing him over on the penalty kill, like 20, 30 seconds max. And they were just flying. And you've got fresh legs. And what I love about that when you mentioned it, Pillsy, was like, look at Thomas Chabot. Look at his game last night. I mean, he's going to make mistakes. All defensemen that have to handle the puck a lot are going to make turnovers. There's going to make mistakes. There's going to be head scratchers. But I loved his competing and his intensity last night. And he played just over 20 minutes. He wasn't playing 27, 28, 29. He was playing 20 minutes. That's his sweet spot, between 20 and I'd say 24 minutes. I mean, depending on how the games are going, obviously, sometimes you have to extend when you have to get maybe a goal or two at the end of the game. But I think ultimately all these players are going to benefit from that. And this is only possible if you have depth in your lineup, right? Like if your fourth line is not going and they're playing like dog shit, then you're going to have to put a little bit more emphasis on your top two lines. I know this is very obvious stuff, but all this contributes to your ice time. And when Jacques has the ability to level it off this way because he trusts the third and fourth line or maybe your bottom pairing defenseman, that is huge. Then everybody's rolling. Everybody has energy to play defense and then get up into the rush. And you start, gaining a little bit of success off of that.
So with Jacques Martin, I think that's pretty universal, the praise that he's getting. Even in the helmet videos, you can see where it's like something that he keeps hammering down is you guys deserve to win that game. In the past,
Yes.
when they'd win, it would almost feel like a fluke. But now it's like they're doing the right things consistently. And one of the other things I like doing is going to hear what the other coach has to say after the game. And in the last 4, 5, 6 Senators wins, they keep saying, we couldn't get to our game. And that's the frustration in the neutral zone and him, the tactician that he's doing. Yeah. So with Jacques implementing this style, I get it. He's 71. He's going to be 72 at the start of next season. Like, is he kind of opening the door that maybe he is the answer to this going forward? Or is that kind of a question that we can push to the side for now?
No. It's valid. Now's the time to talk about it. I think if you're going to bring in a new coach, you're going to have to do it. I mean, in my opinion, you can't do it now, obviously, because, just out of respect to Jacques and what he's been doing with Alfie back there. You're not just going to kick
No.
them aside. Not that
No.
they would do that, and then bring in a guy for the last X amount of games. Now, in a perfect world, the guy that you're going with into next season would be there right now, right? So he gets a good pulse on the group. He understands how to coach who, because it's very individual nowadays, right? Like everybody's different. You have to manage personalities. And so I guess, which would lead me back to my point in your question, I'd be okay with Jacques back there. And I don't want this to be some emotional, knee-jerk reaction right now because the Sens are doing well and everyone's hopping on board. I genuinely mean this. A coach can only do so much for you as a group, right? I mean, he's going to bring you a game plan and you're going to have to execute it. You have to listen. You need good leaders to make sure everyone's held accountable in the room. But from what I'm seeing right now, like how much better, who out there, what better options would you have than Jacques Martin and Daniel Alfredsson behind the bench? I mean, those two right now automatically have all the respect in the world from the group, right?
Yep.
They have a defensive-minded style that this team desperately needed. We'll agree with those 2 points.
Yep.
So, like, what else are you looking for? And I understand he's 71 and the energy and the longevity of an 82-game season is a grind. But if Jacques is saying, I can do this, I feel pretty good. And I mean, I did it with Ken Hitchcock. He wasn't the most mobile guy in the world when I played with him in Columbus. Even when I was in Dallas with him, I don't remember what age he was at. But I mean, cognitively, understood the game just as well as anybody else in the world. So just because the coach doesn't step out on the ice all the time for practice, do you think it freaking matters? No, it doesn't. We're all NHL players. Yeah. We don't always need him out there on the ice. You've got very capable assistant coaches running the skate anyway, and you've got the head coach probably had the original practice plan to begin with, and he's watching on the sides or in the stands. So, I mean, I guess to finish my point, because I know I ramble a lot on this podcast, I think at the end of the day, I would be very comfortable with Jacques Martin coming in next season with Daniel Alfredsson. I don't know that you'll find much better out there.
And just to rewind there, Ken Hitchcock was 66 when you had him in Dallas.
There you go.
So you're right. Yeah.
There you go. Fair enough.
I just wanted to ask a question, Meth. Do you believe that Daniel Alfredsson being an assistant coach is tied to Jacques Martin? Like if Jacques Martin is not the coach next year, do you think Alfie says, you know what, this isn't for me?
No, I don't think so. I think,
okay.
Alfie's like, he takes his time making decisions, right? Like he'll analyze everything and make sure it's the right fit. He's very pragmatic. It's just how he is. And I mean, I admire that about him. I think he's not desperate for a job, right? He wants to make sure that he's going to do it. He's placed in a position where he thinks he can succeed and help and do what he needs to do. Okay. So I think, but having said that, I think him and Jacques, I mean, at the end of the day, they just want to see this team win. Whether Jacques coaching or not, he's still going to be here helping out. He has a huge role with his team, just like Daniel Alfredsson does, which is what I like about both of them, right? There's no agendas here. They have the team's best interest at heart, like most coaches do. But coaches also, they make mistakes. And sometimes when teams start to struggle, maybe they're afraid of losing a dressing room. So they have to become really good friends with some of the leaders, or maybe they're afraid to hold a player accountable because they don't want to lose their job. I don't get that sense with these two. These, like Jacques is beyond that point where he's got to hold people's hands and try to appease everybody in a room. He's just going to do what he thinks is in the best interest of the team. And I honestly feel that way about Daniel Alfredsson as well. So, having a guy like Alfie back there, I think with the right coach, depending on their philosophies and if he agrees with them or whatnot, I think, you'll see him back there regardless. But only Daniel Alfredsson knows that. And I think right now, as I mentioned earlier, I'm very comfortable with both of them moving forward if they chose to stick around.
Man, Jacques Martin should be, in my opinion, in the meeting room when a new coach is hired. I think that'd be awesome. And hey, it brought me back to last night on the broadcast. I think it was either Claire or someone else on your team with TSN. Like Jacques Martin gave Pete DeBoer his first job in the NHL. They had the graphic up in 2008. Like that's so cool. And just the respect. And we heard Mike Sullivan talk, who had Jacques Martin on his staff in Pittsburgh. Like he's just got so much respect around the league. It'd be a shame to waste that talent. So it's great that he's a part of the organization once again. By the end of this season, he'll have over 1,350 career NHL regular season games coached. Like you can't teach that type of experience. We've been clamoring for it after first-time head coach. Boucher had a cup of coffee in Tampa before he was hired, but it's like you need to have a guy who's got that instant respect. Now, Matt, final question for me, and we're 2 weeks to the day out from the trade deadline. At what point does it become either a topic of conversation or something that all the players in the room are cognizant of, that, hey, we're getting close, man, some changes are coming? Is that like a week out? Is that a month out? Like, at what point does it kind of seep into the mindset of a team?
Well, they're aware of it now. I think as a player, you always know when it's around the corner. You just you feel it. Generally, February is that month. Toward the end, you're kind of like, okay, here we go again. Typically, it'll depend on how the group is doing. I've got a weird feeling about it this season, though. I don't know. I don't have any insiders with the team. I don't talk to Steve Staios. I don't know what they're planning on doing. So please just take this with a grain of salt. But I don't get the sense they're going to do much. I don't know how you guys feel about it, but with the team playing the way they are right now, unless there's like a no-brainer gifted trade out there where some team is willing to hand over a relatively good player in a pretty team-friendly deal for Ottawa, I don't know that they're going to make that move. So I don't know. It's always entertaining, right? Like you like seeing movement, and I know that people here are itching for it. But just with the way the team is playing now, and I think a lot of their early on issues were just there's lack of consistency on the defensive side, but I think the team wasn't healthy. There was always a major injury. There was always somebody missing out of the lineup. So I think it wouldn't surprise me if they didn't make much of a splash right now. I'd probably anticipate more movement going on maybe in the summer around the draft or free agency. Because I don't think they need much. As crazy as that sounds, I think this is just a young group. It's a young team. And, as they mature here, pardon me?
You're cautiously optimistic.
Yeah, well, I mean, it is, though, but they're a young group. And we lose sight of that sometimes. I mean, here we are, hyper analyzing Timmy Stützle, just as an example. He just turned 22. I believe, in January. So, we have all these high expectations with a lot of these players because they sign these big deals. But that's also because the game's changing, right? So guys are coming out of their entry-level deals and signing these big long-term deals now. It wasn't the way it was when I played. You'd come out of your entry, maybe go to arbitration and sign a 2-year deal at like $1 million something per, and then hopefully that'll springboard you into a bigger contract. But my point is now, because of these big numbers and these huge the big tickets on some of these guys, we and rightfully so, we do expect a lot from them. But I think this group, we're going to see them take another step forward, hopefully next season. I think hopefully they'll be healthy. Maybe they add a top 4 defenseman. But for me right now, there's a structural issue on the back end. It's not just getting a top 4 guy and throwing him in the lineup. I think you have to make a concession here at some point too. I mean, if you want to take a step forward, we talk about Thomas Chabot as a player rumored to move, for example, right? And then he starts stringing together a couple good games, and then all of a sudden we're back on Thomas Chabot's side, and we're like, well, I don't know if I want to move him. And I'm still bullish on him. I think it was an unreasonable expectation level with him early on when he was here, because he was the only competent defenseman we had at times. No disrespect meant towards any of the other players there, but he was the guy. He was the only guy. Now you've got Sanderson. Now you've got Chychrun. So, you watch and you think, well, maybe we don't need Thomas Chabot, but then who fills in those 25 minutes when he's gone? So you have to be very careful with what you wish for when you start throwing out all these outrageous trade proposals, because I'm telling you, the grass isn't always going to be greener on the other side. It depends who's coming in. I do think they need to finish my point. I do think as far as the trades go, they need a legitimate top 6. They need to get rid of Kubalik. I can say that. I don't know what he's bringing to the table here. And I hate talking shit about players. It makes me feel dirty. I always say that. But to me, I don't see the value with him in the lineup. I like the way Kastelik's been playing. I like the way Parker Kelly's been playing. I think you need a Kubalik type guy maybe there that can handle the puck and lug the pill a little bit with those two. But I don't know how you guys feel about this. I think they need a depth guy maybe in the bottom 6 up front, maybe a top 4 defenseman. I don't think it's going to happen now. I think it's going to happen in the offseason.
Yeah, he probably wants a fresh start too. Like if he goes to a contender and he's like put on a line with top end playmakers as like that third guy, like, hey, we've either got an injury or
it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen.
He's not.
I don't see it with him. No,
Dude, I can't. He
no.
scored 30 goals in this league
He's been
somehow.
so consistent in his career, though.
We're talking about Kubelik here.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just he looks, you're right. You're right in the sense that he might just need a change of scenery. But
He
just
hates having the
watching his-
puck. He hates having
but
it.
when yes, and the reason why I don't have a lot of faith here with him is because typically when players are struggling and fighting it, you're going to see a change in their game where they'll compensate and at least bring another element, right? Like maybe you'll see, a little bit more drive when he's forechecking, and he'll finish some checks, or he'll try to really get his nose dirty at net front, hope that a puck banks off of him into the net. Like, like go above and beyond and work for a goal, get a dirty one. I don't get that vibe from him. It's like he's scared to get into the pile, or he's scared to get his nose dirty. And I'm not suggesting he's scared out there. Obviously I don't see any reason to be scared as a player in today's NHL, but I think maybe just afraid of the contact, or he's a little passive, but man, I don't know where he fits right now.
Yeah, join the rest of the Sens fans community. No one knows what Dominic Kubelik is doing for this team, unfortunately, because there was high hopes when he came in to add some scoring to the bottom six, but just hasn't happened. I'm with you, Matt. I think the trade deadline, they might dump some contracts, but that's going to be it. They're going to wait for the summer for a big move. Final question for me, and I'm not really sure how to ask this, so I'll just get started into the question and see if I can figure it out. Ross and I have been looking at the duo of Norris and Batherson and being like, these guys cannot get it going. They're both in slumps. Jacques Martin is moving other people around, but he's keeping these two together, and they just don't have it. Sure enough, they both have great nights. Drake Batherson with the primary assist on both of Josh Norris's goals. Is there sometimes a feeling in the room where two guys are kind of anchored together and it's not working for them, that the team is like, okay, we got to break those guys up, or they're just about to break through? Like, what's kind of the mindset when you have two top dogs like that are slumping and they're stuck together, and then finally it works for them?
I think we have to manage so with Drake Batherson, I think we have to manage our expectations with him accordingly, right? I think with him, and it's reflective on his contract. I think you're looking at a 60, 70, maybe 75. I don't know. I'm throwing numbers out there right now, but he's that kind of point guy, right? Like, so he's going to be streaky. He's not your top line winger. He's probably your second line guy, second unit power play. I think for me, he's relatively where he needs to be. Now, right now, I'm not particularly happy with where his game's at. I'm sure he feels the same way right now. But typically when he's rolling, he'll have the odd night where he'll put up 2 or 3 points, right? Might have, a goal and 2 assists, or he'll just, because he has the skill set. He's not like your other guys like Brady or Timmy that's going to consistently put up big points, anywhere from 80 to 100 in a season. That's not Drake Batherson. And I'm okay with that. I think most people need to understand that. Now with Josh Norris, that's a little trickier. And right now, I think a lot of it, well, first of all, it's nice to see him get some points. Nice to see him get some even strength goals. Nice to see him kind of get out of that funk last night. I think that's going to be great for his confidence. But as far as how you manage them moving forward, your guess is as good as mine. And that's where you run into trouble, especially with Norris moving forward now, when you're trying to construct a team and you're making, you're evaluating, you've got guys like Shane Pinto, you've got Ridley Gregg now. That's when players become quote unquote expendable. I'm not saying that Josh Norris is an expendable player. He's a great player. He's potentially, I should say, a 40 goal scorer. We've seen potential there before. I'm a fan of his. It just hasn't been clicking for him lately. And I think the team as a whole has been just disjointed at times because there's been a lot of line shuffling. So there's not a lot of consistency with line mates. And you could argue that these are just excuses, but at the end of the day, you're right. These guys get paid a lot of money. They get paid to produce, especially up front when you're, a one-timer threat and you put up 35 plus goals already in your career. So I think for me, I think they're going to get there. Again, I know I keep hammering on this, but they're young. Just got to find the right line mates for him. I don't know that Josh Norris is going to remain a third line player for the Ottawa Senators. I mean, technically, I guess they don't really have a third line right now. They're kind of a 1-2-2. But I have faith in them. And I think, to my earlier point about Batherson, I think he's where he needs to be. I think people need to chill out a little bit with him.
All right. Marc Methot, you can find him on TSN. When's your next broadcast, brother?
I have no idea. I don't know. I'll have to look at the schedule. All I'm focused on right now is going to the gym after this conversation, and then going to the grocery store and paying an obscene amount for a piece of meat. So that's what we're going to do.
What's for dinner today? Why you have white wine with chicken parm?
It's a good question.
Stumped him. Finally, we stumped him.
I don't know. Okay, so typically speaking, my wife doesn't drink red. I'm a red guy. I'm a Pinot Noir guy.
Okay.
But my wife she's the one that buys the wine, and typically we'll have a couple in the fridge all the time. And I usually have a glass at nighttime when I'm cooking, because I do all the cooking.
Nice.
So that's what was available, Ross. I don't know. Do you want to come over and cook for me next time and maybe bring some wine?
Hey, Ross
You
is
might
a good cook.
You might not know this. I
invite.
actually went to culinary school right out of high school.
No way.
Yeah. So
That's awesome.
I mean, yeah, dude.
Okay.
Yeah, dude. Look at this. This is from All-Star Weekend. Your guy Eric Carlson came in All-Star Weekend. I was working at Navarre in the market, and I was like, I got to get him to sign something. So I just grabbed a plate. so yeah,
Nice.
you ripped that. You wouldn't have done that. You would have big time me back in the day. It's all good, man.
Probably.
It's all good.
Probably.
Running around at Junction with no shoes on. I already called you out on that back at DJ Z-Bat. All you boys were going down there.
No
anyways.
shoes?
Oh,
I have
yeah,
always
dude.
worn my shoes.
Okay.
Hey, listen, I've never gotten that's the thing with me. And I mean, you got to credit me on this one. I never used to get like out of control. Like when I would go out, I was always, I knew my limits. And I was notoriously, I was known for leaving the bar early because I just get tired.
Fair.
A little Irish
I was
goodbye.
a boring guy.
And you're not saying goodbye, Irish goodbye too?
Correct.
Yeah.
Because the moment, if you try saying bye to some of your teammates,
they're
here's
looping
shot,
you back
here's a
in.
shot.
Yeah.
oh, they'll bring you back in, or they'll just chirp you for leaving early, call you Houdini or whatever. So I would just sort of ninja dust out of there. I'd pretend I'd have a phone call. Like, yeah, hang on. And I'd kind of walk towards the exit and then make my way out. And then I was gone in an Uber.
Before the bill comes, though, you got to do that. Oh, guys, got to
No,
get
never.
this.
No. I'm never walk away
Okay.
from a bill. No, because that's a no, and you'd hear about it the next day at the rink. So yeah.
Oh yeah.
I don't do that.
Awesome, man. Always great to get some laughs with you. We'll do this again, hopefully before the trade deadline, if not right after. Get a little recap on. And hey, even if the Sens are completely out of the playoff picture, winning's fun. Isn't winning fun? I enjoy it. So
it's fun. And I was gonna say thanks for having me. Again, didn't sleep a lot last night. So if I'm mumbling a little bit this morning, I sound off. I'm just tired. So thanks for your patience, everybody.
Your circadian rhythm just needed that sunshine, that glare, bright and early, and now you're
got it
you're all
early.
set, man.
Early sunlight exposure. You're right.
Yep.
That's southeast sun, baby. Let's go. That's Marc Methot. For Brandon Piller, I'm Ross Levitan. This has been another edition of the Locked On Senators podcast. Your team every day.